Ladies and gentlemen, we are live for a little bit of a ball watching after dark stream. The first of, I'd say, probably a couple. We've got a little loaded agenda, I would say, tonight for you all. It's going to be fun. I think we're going to have a guest in George Gansner joining the pod here very shortly. He's got the link and he will be joining when he gets a couple minutes here to break down some of the drama and the VAR of it all from last night's City versus LAFC game at home that resulted in a 2-0 loss, unfortunately. But you know what? We make do, and we're going to do that plus a little bit of a preview for Cincinnati as well. So a lot to get through in this episode. And I do want to talk about one thing first before we do. And I want to address the Edu Leuven of it all. So for you all today, there was a press conference for the pregame for FC Cincinnati, and Leuven was a part of it as well. And this is the first we've heard from him, I'd say formally, since probably his injury. This is back a long time ago, probably 4 to 6 weeks ago. It feels like even longer when he had a hamstring injury and he's been ruled out there. And he came out today and he opened up to the fan base, to all of us, and kind of gave us a little bit of a look behind the curtains as to what's been going on for him personally behind the scenes, as we haven't seen him in a while. If you're like me, you've been looking into it. Rumors have been circulating and been flying around. And he came out today, and long story short, been dealing with an awful family crisis and having his wife of, I believe, less than a year now, having been diagnosed with brain cancer. And God, it breaks my heart to hear that news from him and to know what he's dealing with because, unfortunately, I have similar experience with a family member of mine. For anyone that went to Hope for the Holidays, I'm sure you know exactly what that is about. That whole event was for the Barnes Jewish Hospital Foundation, specifically a head and neck cancer fund. And Leuven seems to be dealing with it with his wife. And I want to give a couple of things of angles here for you all. Firstly, I think it's tremendously responsible and a little bit heroic of him to come out and address that in front of everyone. I think it takes a lot of courage to come out and open up about your personal life. You don't have to do that. No one is owed, an understanding. We might say that as fans sometimes, and I mean, we kind of get off our high horse. We're a little spoiled here, and I do want to say that by no means does he or did he owe that to us to come out and explain what was been going on. That's totally his personal life. But the fact that he did, I think, shows a lot of leadership and a lot of character behind who he is. And I think, if anything, it rallies our community around he, his wife, and their family and all that have been impacted by this awful, awful situation with his wife. Um, and I want to say from another angle is the thing that I think about too is, if him coming out and addressing this helps anyone on, the city fan base come out and share or go to a clinic and address some of their risk factors or be more aware that cancer is so heartbreaking and it impacts so many different people, even those untouchable athletes and their families. I say that with some air quotes. This humanizes everyone. Cancer does not discriminate. It comes after everyone and anyone. It sounds so bleak when I say that, but for you all, I'm sure many, many, many of you have your own personal experiences with it, if not with those of a family member. And I, if anything, I think this can do good as well and hopefully educate others around this awful disease and make us more aware of the choices that we make. Because, there's a lot of preventable types of cancer out there as well. And I think about it from the head and neck lens because of what I know from working with the foundation there. But not all types obviously are preventable. There's a lot of genetic things that you just can't change. But to be aware of your risk factors and to live your lives in ways that can maybe make that less of a chance is great. And I think someone that champions that Edu Leuven epitomizes that to me. If there is any good to come out of this, it will come from a guy like that, that handles it with this type of attitude and has a good family, strong foundation and background. And it sounds like his wife is a superstar, helping support him through this all as well. There are so many great things about this that, it's an awful disease, but it does tend to show a lot of silver linings as well, and it brings people together. So I hope we as a community can rally around Leuven, whether that's through some sort of cheer or some sort of exercise, what have you. I know that we will. We're the best fan base in soccer in America, and I know that St. Louis always shows out. So just wanted to clear that for you all, and hopefully you all saw it. But if you haven't, obviously some really tough news. I do think he is going to probably get his first minutes of recently on Saturday. It sounds like he is ready to go. We'll see how that factors into his play mentally. But man, I just respect the guy, because if that's me, I'd probably do the same thing, commit to family. So a very, very tough situation for Edu Leuven going into this weekend, but I'm glad we know more now as fans. So I just want to give him some props there. But getting into the recap for this game, we are being joined in the green room by none other than the man in the spotlight, George Gansner. George, welcome to the show. George, how are you finding yourself on this Thursday night?
A lot fewer texts than last night. So I'm happy to join you, Jake. Thanks for having me on.
Well, George, thank you for joining on the After Dark here. I know that's it's normally a later time for us than usual to get recording hit this, but George, I know you didn't catch the game live last night, but it was full of controversy. I think I might side with you on some of these, because I've given some time, given some thought. I've kind of sat with things a little bit, and I'm sure a lot of fans have, but wanted to kind of pick your brain, George, on some of those decisions last night, because the three things that come to mind for me are, obviously we had the PK called for us. No one rose any bit of anything when it initially happened live, but obviously it was called back and VAR reviewed it, so that was a PK. We had our goal removed, nixed off the board from VAR. And then there was the second yellow to Mark Hannick that obviously kind of changed the game with a red. So, George, wanted to kind of get your feel on the game last night. And from a referee's perspective, what was the job like? Do you think that was a job well done? Would you do things differently? Give us the take, George.
So let me save my opinion till the end, but I think you'll understand my opinion once we get there, okay? And there are one or two other things, if we have the time, Jake, that I want to touch on. So let's start with the penalty for St. Louis at the 13th minute-ish. Let's start with the fact that should have been a goal kick and not a corner kick, okay? The handball came from a corner kick that was served across, eventually ends out with Klaus, I believe, who then serves the ball back across.
Yep.
As the defender jumps in the penalty area, turns his back, and the ball deflects off his arm and continues on. So the reality there is that it's a clear handball. VAR did its job. Personally, I wish that had been called on the field. I don't know why it wasn't. Maybe nobody saw it. But at the end of the day, VAR did its job. But again, just a reminder to the St. Louis fans out there, that should never have happened, because it should have been a goal kick and not a corner kick on that previous play. Okay? So the second one you mentioned is the St. Louis goal that was taken away. So this one will take a little bit longer to describe and maybe even discuss. The law says, and I'm talking layman's terms here, I'm not reading the law verbatim as we talk. So this is a situation where a handball is completely different from anywhere else in the laws. Okay. I don't know what just got put up there, but that's hilarious. And by the way, thank you for the beacon last night.
Of course.
In any case, okay, so this is a situation where the handball law is interpreted differently than in any other case. All right. A goal cannot be scored when a ball hits a hand. Intent, position makes no difference. We normally talk about a player making themselves big as they slide out or whatever. It's completely irrelevant in this case. Your arms can literally be tucked by your side, completely tucked. And if it hits your arm and either directly goes into the goal, drops to your foot and you play it into the goal, or drops to your teammate's foot and plays it into the goal, it is not a goal, no matter what. Again, doesn't matter intent, doesn't matter where your hands were, doesn't matter anything other than the ball came off your arm and then immediately went into the goal. Okay, so that's where the decision is made last night. Now, let's throw a caveat in there. If the ball hits an arm, drops to his foot, he knocks it back to Klaus, who then serves it across for a header that then maybe gets saved off the line and put in, then it doesn't matter. Then now we're going back to, was it an unnatural position? Was it, was it deliberate or all the things that we normally talk about, right? And so, but this is the one place where none of that matters. It hits your arm or your hand, regardless of its position, and goes in the goal in the next play. It is not a goal, okay? Anything there before we move on to the other stuff?
No, I first of all, I appreciate that clarification too. George, it to me is interesting because I try to always compare things to things that I experience like in different sports, for example. So the first thing that comes to mind when you're explaining the situation of potentially having your hands pinned at your sides, having the ball ricochet off of your hands that is pinned to your side and into the goal, that would still be a handball. I think about hockey, for example, where there's a big difference on it can hit your skate and go in for your own goal if you're on the offense. But if you kick it intentionally, that will get ruled back. And sometimes it's a little bit subjective as to if they're actually meaning to. But here, I feel like they're trying to be more clear and say if it hits any part of your hand or arm, on the way, that way, what is it, like the sleeve down, like where your
sleeve down, right? We're not talking about up here.
Right.
We're talking about sleeve down.
That we are, as, this refereeing body, we are going to say that unanimously anything that down, no matter where your hand is at, if it goes into the goal, that'll be ruled out.
And that is a global thing. That is not a league by league decision on how they interpret. That is completely global. And no matter what, as long as it's seen, whether it's initially or through video review, it's a done deal. You cannot have a goal.
So, George, even though, because I think that's so much clearer if Marcanic happens to be on the doorstep and it ricochets off him and goes in the goal, that to me is clear. I think I was less in the know when it comes to bouncing off that part of his body and then having him kick it in the net. I thought that might be a little bit different, but you're saying it's being treated the same.
That is treated the same. And again, even if it had gone to a teammate who kicks the ball directly into the goal, it is also not a goal. Okay? Got it. So before we get into the red card, the second caution to Marcanic, let's talk about the very first one. Okay.
Yeah.
So early in the first half, he makes a tackle, and there's a reason to talk about it this way too. Okay. He makes a tackle that it's a little bit reckless. It's just a foul, but it's a little bit reckless. And the foul is given. Okay. It's just a foul. Then a little bit later, and I don't remember the exact time of the yellow card, there's another reckless tackle. And let me talk about what this reckless tackle comes from, and I'll tell you a little story behind this as well. The reckless tackle comes from a bad first touch from Anthony Marcanic. Okay. It's a bad first touch. The ball gets away from him. He takes a step. He lunges at the tackle. He goes over the top of the ball. So now we're talking about the referee has to make a decision between a yellow and a red card. Is there excessive force? Is there hard surface of the shoe on the soft tissue? Is his knee bent or straight? Things like this. Okay, all the things that you look for. Remember I said it came from a bad first touch. Okay, this is a clear yellow card for me. So when I was still in the league and Peter Walton, who had been an EPL referee, took over and was leading the referees, one of the stories he told us right away was when he landed and met with Commissioner Garber early on. Commissioner Garber, one of the first things he said to him was, "Your referees give too many yellow cards. Please fix that." Okay, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing here a little bit. So Peter told us, he said, "Look," I told him, "Sure, absolutely. Let me go watch some video for the next 30, 60 days, and I'll come back to you, and we will have a solution, and we'll move forward with that solution." So Peter then tells us he watched a lot of video, he watched a lot of games, and he went back to Don Garber and said, "So let me tell you something. I will be happy to clean up the yellow cards, but your players have a bad first touch. Please clean that up first, because that in and of itself will reduce the yellow cards." Okay. So this is the same thing. This is exactly the same thing. This is a bad first touch that results in a ball that gets away from him. He takes a step, he lunges at the ball,
Right.
that is almost all the time going to be a yellow card. So the referees are trained to understand if you recognize a bad first touch, it's a trigger point to say, watch what happens next. It's not necessarily a yellow card. It's maybe not even a foul in some cases, but you have a high probability of a yellow card or a red card coming from a bad first touch. Okay. That is a trained thing. They know this. So, and again, it's not about a player. It's about the touch itself and what as a trigger point. So that's the first half. We go into the second half, and I'll come back to a couple of different things, but we go into the Marcanic situation here. So he has the ball. He's moving away from the player. The player tightens his space between him. There's maybe some minimal contact. There's maybe a little bit of what looks like a push, okay? And then Anthony kind of throws his head up in the air, throws his arms back, and goes to the ground, all right? And I've watched this over and over and over. And so I'm going to start with something really unpopular. It's not a foul on Anthony Marcanic for me, okay? It's just not. So that's step number one, and I'll come back to that in a second. Step number two is the hand going back is like a hockey stick. If we go back into what we talked about earlier and using other sports. In hockey, you have to be in control of your stick or you could end up in the penalty box, right? Same scenario here. Back in the early 2000s, late 90s, players were whacking down at the body when they wanted to get somebody off of them or away from them. That's not what Anthony's doing here. However, this is also not incidental, right? This is not just Anthony just happens to catch the guy in his face. This is a clear, his arm goes back and gets him with an open hand, and I'll talk about that in a second too. The situation then in the early 2000s was the players started coming up. So the league said, we got to get that out of the game, right? We need to get everybody's getting hit up high around the face. So contact above the shoulder with an open hand, which is what happened with Anthony, became a yellow card. That's 100%, right? And this is what happened last night.
Right.
This is not incidental. This isn't somebody walks up and just puts, does this to somebody, puts their hand on their face and just kind of pats it. That could also be a yellow card, depending on how it was done. Was it friendly? Was it not friendly? Right? Because it's contact above the shoulder. Anything that gets a little bit more force, again, same thing, contact above the shoulder. This is very, very clear for me. Doesn't matter if it's the first card or the second card, it is a yellow card every single time. Okay. If Anthony had closed his fist, different story, it's red card. Okay. And that's instant. Now, what I want to ask your viewers and listeners to do is you can disagree with me that you think there's a foul there or not a foul there on Anthony Marcanic. For me, that's not a foul. Okay. There's a little contact, but it's not a foul. Transpose the players. Okay. Anthony Marcanic is now the defender and the player with the ball is the opponent. Is that a foul for you now? Or is that really, really soft? Okay. Now let's change it back and let's say there is a foul on Anthony Marcanic. Okay. The foul may go for St. Louis in that case, but we still have a second yellow card for contact above the shoulder. All right. And then it's still a send off in any way, shape, or form. Okay. So that's that scenario. To me, I think it's important to talk about the first two tackles, especially the yellow card, and then this one because they all lead up to what it is. And it's just it is what it is. It's a clear yellow card. So
God, George, I appreciate you painting the bigger picture too, because I was one when people asked me about that today too. That first challenge was really reckless from him, and I can't help but think too about the referee watching that challenge happen, that first one, being his first yellow card, I think in the 27th minute it was, and how reckless that is. George, does that kind of factor in, at least maybe even subconsciously, into referee's mind, saying this player made a really reckless, potentially dangerous challenge that when I first saw it, George, that first one, I was like, that could be reviewed. That could look pretty bad above the ankle. Again, I was live. I was there. I couldn't see the replays.
Good point, Jake. So had he been higher or on, so now you have hard surface against soft tissue higher on the leg, you have a borderline red card there. If you have a straight leg, you clearly have a red card. And if you have any excessive force, even with a bent leg, you could have a red card. Does that come into play later on? Not in this case, but absolutely it does. Um, you know that player already did this. If that player continues to tackle the way that they got the yellow card for, they're putting at risk a decision from the referee to send them off.
Yeah.
Are you looking for it? Nope. Just know it's there.
Yeah.
Right? That has nothing to do with this different situation where his arm goes back and his hand hits the defender in the face.
And I want to clarify too, because I think a lot of people get hung up on the intention. Because you and I, we know, did he mean to catch that player in the face? No. But what is he doing with that hand? He is trying to gain a better position, get the guy behind him, feel where he's at. And that is his intention. When he hits the face, it doesn't matter what your intention is. It's going to be called. I love the what you texted me last night and what you just said now with the above the shoulder is just going to be a yellow card. Now, I think maybe some of the frustration could also come, and I'm reading between the lines here. Maybe some fans see that sometimes. George, do you see that where it's ever not called consistently as a yellow, like just off the bat?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. And even by saying this, I promise you in Cincinnati on Saturday, that somebody's going to get hit in the head with a hand or an errant hand, and it's probably it won't happen. They won't get a yellow card or a red card, and then everybody's going to come back to me and say, "But you said this." So look, incidental contact above the shoulder is not generally a yellow card. Okay, it could be. It could also be a red card incidentally, but in this case, this is not incidental. And it's contact above the shoulder. And so that's what they're looking for. And this is very, very clear. Had Joe Dickerson not sent him off immediately with a second yellow card, I'm quite sure it would have been sent for review. And I know you can't review yellow cards, right?
Right.
But they may have sent it for a review for a red card because it was pretty solid. Now, Joe hopefully would have done his job and said, it's not a red card. His hand is open. There's no excessive force. This is not violent conduct. Okay, so then Joe doesn't go back and give a yellow card because he chose not to in the first place, right? Yeah. So it can't be reviewed for the yellow, but it could be reviewed for a red. Let me take that, if you will, Jake, to another scenario here, different later in the game, and I don't remember the exact time. Let me see if I can find it real quick because I made some notes. The 83rd minute, and I want to go back to the 80th minute, something if we have time. I don't know what you're looking at for time. I know you're live, so
go for it.
So in the 83rd minute, there appears to be a handball by Murillo from LAFC. Okay, ball's played in, it bounces.
Yep.
To me, looks like it goes off his hand. All right, for me, this is a handball. Everybody, their hands go up, the benches jump up, everybody's looking for the handball, and they don't give it. Now, Apple TV on an MLS Season Pass, they replay it, but only from the original angle, which now it's not clear if it's a handball. And they show a second angle, which for me is not clear that it's a handball. Okay, so let's assume that the VAR had a quick look and says, I don't have anything clear here. And they see the same things we do. They have the same camera angles. So if there's another camera angle, they can ask for that. Apple TV chose not to show us that. But in any case, we have the same camera angles. That's what they're using. I don't see any clear evidence in what Apple TV shows us to say 100% that's a handball. Okay, so do I think it's a mistake? Absolutely, I think it's a mistake. I think it also then could be reviewed. The handball in general couldn't be reviewed, except for the fact that it denied a clear goal scoring opportunity for Sam Adeniran if the ball goes through. Okay, so now we have to say, okay, that could be then reviewed for for what we call dog so. If they have a quick look and they have no evidence, they're not going to go. They're not going to send Joe to the screen to have a look that maybe it might happen. That's just not the case. My opinion is I think they messed that one up. I think there's a clear goal scoring opportunity on a handball by Murillo. They should have sent him off. We get a free kick just outside the penalty area. Again, that's my opinion. The other one that I think people were up in arms, and again, a lot of these things start to create the tension and the frustration among the fans. And I love it among the fans because that's what we're supposed to do as fans, is have that frustration, but also among the players and the benches and the coaches and with Lutz Pfannenstiel, who went to have his say with the referees after the match as well. So at least what we see in video, right? I have no idea what was said. You can see Lutz there talking to the referees. So, but in any case, at the 80th minute, AZ Jackson gets into the penalty area and appears to be taken down.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm watching this for the first time. My first reaction was penalty. We have a penalty. Okay. There's no call. It moves on. I think it goes out for a throw-in or something to that effect. In any case, they then show a different angle. They show the angle from behind the goal. And I have something completely different now. My first view tells me that the defender put his shoulder into the middle of AZ's back, which is then not a legal challenge, and it's a penalty. And that never happens. From the other angle, you see the player put his elbow out toward AZ. As AZ feels his elbow, AZ throws his right leg out, drops to the ground. Joe has a great view of it, and Joe Dickerson, the referee, has a great view of it. And after I see the second angle, it's not a penalty. It's not. Maurice Adu said so on the thing too. He's like, I just don't see a penalty there. And so, I mean, I don't. When you have a player who does that and you have a great view of it, you can't give the penalty. You can't give it. And so I'm with Joe on that one. That's not a penalty either. And so I think there's a lot of frustration that got built up. I think in the stadium, it's clear you don't see these things. I listened to the first half on the Odyssey app on Y98. Or the second half, I was on a plane from Houston back to St. Louis. Get home and my my phone blows up with text, right? So clearly something happened. But the reality is after I watched the game this afternoon, and I watched all 90 plus minutes, whatever was added, I had one real problem with what Joe did last night, just one. And that was the handball that, for me, should have been a denial of a clear goal scoring opportunity, a red card, 83rd minute or whatever it was. Does that change the game? Maybe it doesn't. But it's the only thing that, for me, again, other than the goal kick that should have been given on our first penalty from a corner, there wasn't really a lot there that could he have done some different things? Maybe. But all in all, up through the 83rd minute, it was a pretty good job. And that 1 minute, yes. And then the rest of the game, he had to work because everybody was frustrated.
I agree. George, and I think you painted the picture too with switching the shoe to the other foot. And when I think back, and I think why I've been able to process today and be able to come to terms with some of those decisions is, when you do think about them, I would be very hard pressed to find any City fan that would have been in agreement with perhaps if LAFC had, scored that goal that Marcanic scored and then had it not had it overturned, would have been very up in arms. It's just so easy to take your one perspective and not consider the laws, which in most parts are pretty clear, and you can kind of make a discernible decision, just like you called out with the leading to a goal opportunity with the handballs, and two, just take a step back and think about what you would think if you're on the other side of that. And I think we would felt really, really hard done by that. So ultimately, when I think about that game, and I'll get into the rest of the recap here, George, after you leave here, but I don't think that's a refereeing, game where I'm like, that was marred by bad decisions, or, VAR wasn't used here, or it was used incorrectly here. I just think we were on the wrong side. But rightfully so on a couple of those. Besides, I agree that handball, I was right in front of it where I was. It felt really unfortunate. It sucks that the angles didn't do much probably to help VAR on that review, but that's the nature of it sometimes. If you don't have the angle, you can't turn it over.
No, we used to, I think I said this last time we talked, we used to be able to smell things, and you knew it happened. You just didn't see it happen, and you could smell it and you could deal with it, right?
Yep.
Because there weren't as many cameras. We didn't have VAR. Now that we have VAR, the smell test goes away. You either see it clearly or VAR sees it clearly, and that's what you deal with. We've asked for a black and white scenario with the referee situation, and that's what we've gotten. There's no gray. There used to be gray, that there are things that happened last night that we could have said, not calling it. I'm not calling it because the same thing happened down there on the other end, and that shouldn't have happened, and this shouldn't have happened. I'm not calling it. You can't do that anymore, right? Alan Chapman did a really good job with the game in Kansas City, to really let the play go and set a line that was a lot higher. But there's still not the ability to make changes like that anymore. It's very, very black and white. Real quick, the Denny Bouanga goal, the first one, he does a brilliant job of taking Marcanic getting him out of position,
Yep.
taking him with him on 2 or 3 steps back toward the ball, and then turns the corner as Anthony's looking up to see
Yep.
where the ball is. And there are 3 St. Louis players. I saw some scuttlebutt about that or heard about it. Why was that offside? There were 3 players that kept him onside on that play. And he was a clear yard onside when the ball was played, even with Anthony Marcanic, right? But that is all the credit to Denny Bouanga there. That is a brilliant move from a forward to take 2 or 3 steps back toward the ball on an angle, turn and go as the ball's being played. And so, that's really fantastic.
I love him. I love we're on the same page, George. I mean, unfortunately, I have to agree with you on all these things. I think a lot of the big uproar today is more reactionary, and when you kind of dig into the laws,
I love it. It's emotional.
no,
right?
it's good.
I love that.
People care, and I appreciate that. So hopefully they can learn a thing or two here about, from an expert, a professional that's been in the game, that's refed at some of the highest levels. I mean, these are tough decisions. These are people get paid a lot of money now, especially in this new CBA, to make these decisions. So I'm not saying you have to trust them blindly, but let's do our due diligence, right, before we just make our judgment call on whether or not we agree with that performance.
Oh no, so I'll disagree with you a little bit, Jake, because in the stadium you want to have that passion and that
of
emotion,
course,
right? I'm 100% there, but again, St. Louis Santos. Once I asked for questions for the radio show that I do on KMOX, and they said it doesn't matter to us. Everything against St. Louis is a bad call. I love that. I love it, love it, love it. But the reality is there are laws of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, we have to abide by the laws of the game. And this is, I mean, I've got a lot of experience there. It's why we talk. So I try to be level-headed about it. As much as I'm a fan of St. Louis and I want them to succeed, you still have to back off and say, okay, what's the reality here? So.
Of course. Well, George, and you always bring us back to reality. I appreciate you taking the time here, especially on an extended edition at 10 p.m., 10:30 now local time. George, this has been phenomenal breaking this down. So we are going to push this out, make sure everyone understands the context around those decisions last night, as we are now 24 hours out after the game, but it still feels raw.
Yeah, no, it's great to be on with you, Jake. I appreciate it. And look forward to the next one.
Sounds good, George. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too. Cheers.
All right. And that was George Gansner, our MLS referee expert that we get to have on the show, doing an extended, almost half-hour sin bin. I mean, you guys are spoiled here. So thank you so much to George again for coming on and doing that, especially late at night. And we've kind of gotten through most of the recap, guys, already. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump into my overall takeaways from this game. And I'm going to close out on the VAR thing. Obviously, we've done our sin bin now. And I think this is going to transition us to the rest of the show is, the refereeing for some, it was a difficult night. We felt like that was in the spotlight. You never want to have a game where it's marred by decisions. It's marred by how a referee manages a game. But guys, last night was not a loss for us that was caused by the referee, at least in my humble opinion. We lost that game on our own by mistakes, as George mentioned towards the end there with the offsides. The trap that Bouanga almost played on Marcanic, and Bouanga putting another goal in late on. That's what you get from a superstar, and that is why I talk about, people talk about signing Cedric Toykard and maybe Marco Royce even at some point. This is the type of player that I think we need to be in the market for eventually. I'm not saying it's this season necessarily, but someone that has the individual quality as well as the team camaraderie to be able to be a difference maker on their own. And someone that can seize the game by the throat and say, I'm going to salvage a point for us tonight, or I'm going to grab all 3 points tonight. Neither team has really shown a whole lot like last night, but Denny Bouanga, wearing that 99 in his jersey, says, I want it, and I want it more than the next guy. So he goes out and he grabs it. So that for me kind of is your proof of concept of why I believe in us trying to sign a player of that ilk at some point. We had 6 yellow cards last night. I think after some of the VAR decisions, we definitely lost our cool a little bit. And I think we kind of played in to the atmosphere a little bit, which I think was frustrating. I think we mentally were kind of a little bit checked out, a little bit overly emotional at times, which can be a good thing sometimes. You want to see people that care, of course, but big games, like I said, they come down to those fine, fine margins, and LAFC were just better last night in those slim margins. They finished their opportunities. If I look at our chance creation last night, we generated 0.36 XG. If you take the PK out of it, we generated 0.36 XG. That's not going to win you games. It's just not. We had 8 of our 14 shots were outside the 18, and all but 5 of our shots on target were well outside the 18. I'm talking 30 yards plus on some of these. I feel like we're really struggling, especially looking at last night, to really do that penetrating final pass in the 18 or in and around the 18 at least, that leads to a really solid chance. It just wasn't there last night. Did we respond even to going down last night? Nope. After we conceded that first goal, we conceded, or we only generated 0.06 XG. That's not a response. I mean, this team had half an hour to gear up and come back, wasn't there. And the subs, the timing, I think the coaching last night was a theme for me, because we made the subs were ready to come on before we conceded. Yet after we conceded that goal, the same subs were made. And I think throwing Sam Adeniran in against a low block LAFC side, what are you doing? That's not his game. He is a guy that makes his money and prints money, in fact, in transition, in open games. This was but like the least open game after they scored. So I don't get it very much, especially after you see the goal. You might want to change things up. And again, I feel like I'm proven right as well there. He didn't do much last night when he came on. It wasn't just him. I don't think AZ was particularly impressive either. I thought actually Blum had an okay appearance off the bench. Good seeing him get some minutes, obviously getting the yellow as well. But my heart and soul of the team last night, guys, if I'm going to try to sum this up here, Tomas Ostrak was my man. 2 shots on target, 7 passes into the final third, 3 for 3 on accurate long balls, 2 for 2 on tackles won. He is, and I've said it before, quickly becoming the de facto Leuven, alternative if he's not there. And I think he plays a little bit of a deeper role right now than I want him to. But he really controlled the midfield last night. He really dictated how things were for us. He was able to spray that long pass when needed to. He got stuck in on some tackles. I thought he just had a lot of life to him. And for me, he was a bright spot in an otherwise pretty underwhelming performance from this team. Justin isn't able to be on the show tonight for us, but he did put his in. Nico was his heart and soul of the team. With Nico coming back to St. Louis. If you guys didn't see him last night, he was at the line when the guys are coming off the field for warmups, dapping everyone up, giving guys hugs after getting promoted this week. So it's been a big week for Nico. So I love to hear it. So our Heart and Soul of the Team is sponsored by Soul Juice. Get 20% off your online orders for Soul Juice at souljuice.com using code BALLWATCHING if you'd like, or visit your Costco's locally here, your On the Runs locally here, your Schnucks locally here, and pick them up. They're usually about in the produce section, so that's where you can go find them. But that wraps up most of the recap. Otherwise, Justin and I did not fare well on our predictions and Grahammers last night. Both of us I predicted a 3-2 W. He predicted a 2-2 draw. I had a bet of an over 3 goals, did not hit. He had City over 1.5. Obviously did not come close there. So it's a rough night all around, guys. So you know what? Let's pat that down and tuck it away and be done with it as we move into what's looking to be the toughest fixture of our season as we head away to Cincinnati, FC Cincinnati. If y'all remember last season, we had some fun with this team. It was the awful long rain delay after that crazy storm, and we smacked them up. There's just no other way to describe it. 5-1. The boys in the locker room were just dancing, vibing, having fun, keeping it light during that delay. And then we had Stroud and Leuven score in the 3rd and 39th minute, respectively. Kyle Hebert even got on the board with a nice, great glancing header. And then Gioacchini and Alm also had goals, finishing the 57th minute. So 5 goals in less than 60 minutes for this team. We conceded 1 in the 62nd for them to get their 1. But it was a night where we were lethal on our scoring. We did not none of those chances were amazing chances. I think Joaquin's was the highest at 0.26 XG, but Stroud at 0.07, Leuven at 0.06. We made the most. So it was a great night for our finishing. And Cincinnati kind of went back with their tail between their legs, but they went on to win the Supporters Shield. But I think that was one of the biggest wins for us of the season, if you look at it. So what's changed for Cincinnati? Incoming wise, they brought on Corey Baird. He's coming off his career best season at Houston Dynamo, where he had 14 goal contributions, 8 goals, 6 assists. And that's kind of starting to backfill the Vasquez size hole they have in the team after he transferred out to Mexico this past transfer window. They brought in Pavel Bucha with Moreno out the door, since he promptly acquired him from the Czech First Division. Victoria Pilsen. He forms a new midfield kind of trio alongside Nwambodo and Luciano Acosta. Lucho Acosta, for those that like to follow him. And they bought another big signing for me was Miles Robinson. He is a American-U.S. men's national team center back, a 2-time best 11 center back. So he's a great, great player, especially here in the MLS. He arrives from Atlanta United, and one of the highest paid players, I'd say, at his position now. And he's partnered with Matt Miazga, who is the reigning MLS Defender of the Year. So they made some big acquisitions this past season up to prep for this season. Outgoing wise, they transferred out Santiago Arias, who was their starting right wing back, and he signed for a Brazilian top flight over the winter. Junior Moreno, who I already mentioned, who was replaced by Pavel Bucha. Venezuelan international midfielder, was out of contract, signed for a Saudi Pro League side. And Yerson Mosquera, who had a successful season-long loan here at Cincy last season. He's a Colombian international center back. He returned to his Premier League side in the Wolverhampton Wanderers, but he's now on loan again, once at Villarreal in La Liga. And then Brandon Vasquez, like I mentioned, Cincinnati caught a $7.5 million fee to sell him to Monterrey with $1 million in add-ons and a sell-on clause. He had 26 goals, 12 assists, and 62 matches for them over the past 2 years. So a great striker. I think they're still missing, but they're doing okay with. So this year, how's Cincinnati looking? We knew, obviously, the Supporters Shield winner last year didn't fare as well in the playoffs. They are 8-2-3 win-loss draw in the East with 27 points. They are 1 point, I believe, behind Miami as of right now, and a game in hand. So very well could be the best team in the league in terms of points. Home record sitting at 3-1-2, away at 5-1-1. Best in the MLS, guys, away from home. Goals for 16 against 10 goals against. Best in the MLS there. So they are a strong defensive team. Some key results I've seen from this team. They drew at Toronto. I think it was earlier in the season, back when Toronto was people thought might be okay this season. They defeated New York City FC just like we did. They lost against Red Bull. Red Bull have been a great side so far this season, but they did just beat Columbus in Columbus this past weekend. So I know Columbus hasn't been great in the MLS this season, but the guys are competing for the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. So they are a good team. They won the MLS Cup last year. That's a great win. They also defeated Atlanta this past Wednesday while we were playing against LAFC. So a good win for them there. Some key players, like I mentioned, Lucho Acosta. It's hard to look past this guy. He's an Argentinian, but now has American citizenship as well. Greggy Berhalter. What are we thinking here? Could we bring in some new creative talent for the World Cup? We'll see. I'm not really advertising that, but entertaining. And he's a 29-year-old DP. He's a smaller guy, but man, this guy packs a punch. 17 goals, 14 assists last season. Already has 6 goals, 7 assists this season, starting in 12 of their first 13 games. So he is off to his normal ways. Pavel Bucha, like I mentioned, 26-year-old Czech Republic international. He was signed by Cincy in February, like I said, from the Czech First Division. He's played in some Champions League matches. He's got some big experience under his belt, starting in all 13 of their first games, and has 0 goals, but has 4 assists from the midfield. Looks to be a nice little playmaker sitting behind Lucho Acosta, protecting behind him. And then Miles Robinson, like I said, he's at 29 caps for the U.S. men's national team. He's now 27 years old. He did rupture his Achilles tendon back in May of 2022 when playing for Atlanta, which kind of threw a little bit of a dent in his hopes for the World Cup. But he is starting and playing full 90s in 12 games so far this season for them, is really their rock in defense alongside Matt Miazga. We do have a St. Louis native on the team in Kip Keller, who was the 5th overall selection in the 2022 draft from SLU 6 games played, about 5 starts for him. I'm saying St. Louis native. I'm going to treat him as our own because he went to SLU and roll Bills. They have Yuya Kubo, 3 goals, starting 12 of 13 games this season, and DeAndre Yedlin, who they made a late move for. Obviously, he's the former Inter Miami captain, U.S. men's national team right back. He has started 12 of the 13 games played this season, and 3 of those were with Miami. So who are they coached by? I have so much immense pride in this. They are coached by Pat Noonan, who is Dismet Jesuit, class of 1999, and the reigning coach of the year in the MLS. How cool is that to say, guys? That's St. Louis, born and bred player, and now coach that is coaching at the top levels here in the MLS and getting awards like that over the likes of Bradley Carnell. So it's a big kind of cool honor for us to have here, and he's doing some really cool things with Cincinnati. So style formation wise, he looks to kind of usually deploy a 3-back system. I'm kind of usually seeing it as 3-4-1-2. Where that one sitting behind 2 strikers is Lucho Acosta. The guy is just the lock picker. He can just do whatever he wants, makes that ball dance. He's their number 10. 2 more, usually about 2 forwards ahead of him, who are more than capable of scoring. Kubo being one of those, and then he has that back line that's just anchored by Miazga and Miles Robinson and whoever the hell they want to put next to them. Sometimes it's Kip Keller, which is awesome. Love to see that. This is a team that likes to connect the ball, a lot of short passes. They do like to get in behind as well with a lot of through balls. And when they do get into good positions, they will take long shots. You'll notice I'll pull some stats in here about how the shots and the distance has changed season over season for them with new personnel. But their last 5 home games were a draw, win, loss, win. And they are accumulating 1.60 points per match in home games with a +1 goal differential this season. Their strengths as a team are chance creation through some individual skills, stealing balls from the opposition, chances on through balls, like I mentioned, and they can also shoot from some direct free kicks. But once they get that lead, guys, it's tough. It's really tough to get it back from them. So they're good at protecting those leads. Look at the XG side for them. They are a top 10, top 11 side in XG with 1.5 per 90. But their output, their scoring, actually, their goals for is 1.25 per 90, which puts them in the bottom 10. So they're underperforming that. But at home games, they're over. They're doing better than their normal XG at home with 1.59, so almost 1.6, which puts them about average for home form, scoring about every 113 minutes, which is, again, getting back to the underperforming sense that they've had so far offensively. They score about a third of their goals from the 61st to 75th minute, and about another 27% from 46 to 60. So definitely a big second half team when you think about their goal scoring output. They're a top 10 in shots team, number 4 in shots on target. And this is an interesting stat you guys will like here. The number 4 in the average shot distance being longer. So not the shorter. So they take the 4th most longest shots of the teams in the MLS on average. And a big thing for that for me is I think a regression since Brandon Vasquez left. He was their fox in the box. He's always there at the right moments and is able to scoop up that ball in the 18 and put it in the back of the net. They've lost that a little bit. They lost all that physical presence. So I think they're now taking more shots from outside the 18, which you will probably notice on Saturday. Open play and set pieces, they're top 10 in XG in both. So this is a team that can hit you both ways. I'm not looking at one of those and pointing out a weakness. They're number 3 in the amount of through balls played, number 5 in big switches, both of which present us issues typically. If I look at their possession numbers, they do a lot of good possession. They're a top 10 team when you look at possession overall, but they're top 5 team in the attacking third. So this team will look to control the game in our half, if possible, and knock it around and look for that incisive pass that'll really carve us open. If I look at their defense, this is a big strength of theirs. I'm not going to put it lightly. They allow 1.26 expected goals against per 90, which is the 6th best in the league, but they're only allowing 0.83 goals against per 90, which is number 1. That's right, the best in the MLS. It's a little bit at home. for the expected goals against, 1.14, so it's better than overall. They're just a good, really strong defensive team. They don't make it easy on you, and they're usually looking to concede typically around the same time that they actually score. So second half, look for us to carry more threat, to get in behind, to actually challenge them and to create more goal scoring opportunities. In terms of shots on target against, they're number 5 and how many they allow, and making the delineation between open play and set pieces. So open play, they allow the least amount of expected goals against in the MLS, and they've allowed the least amount of goals against as well in open play. Set pieces, they also allow the 4th lowest expected goals against. So not a big weakness there either. I'm trying to dig here. Where is the silver lining for us to try to see what we can kind of pry open and get in on Cincinnati for? They're number 1 in the amount of tackles in the MLS, and they're number 1 in the attacking third specifically. So they do have a little bit of a high press to them that we need to be aware of as a fan base, and top 10 in all thirds. So they're a pretty aggressive team overall, I would say. They are backed by Roman Celentano, who's been a pretty solid goalkeeper for them these past couple of seasons. His post-shot XG minus goals against is at plus 2.1, so saving about, over the course of the season so far, he's saved about 2 goals, I would say. He's a top 3 save percentage guy and tied for second in clean sheets. So this is a very freaking good team as I get through it. Keys of the game. I had to get creative here, guys, to try to think about what we can do here, but I think a lot of it hits you in the face. We got to stay really active on those through balls, passing on runners to the next defender. Tim Parker handing off to Mark Koenig or to Nilsson or to Hebert or to whoever's next to him, passing off in a physical sense, but also a communication sense, making sure that they know that's now their man. That's now their man. They are a team that plays a lot of through balls, so you've got to be very wary of that. I want to see better things from this team in terms of defensively. Let's not. The jumping in is kind of starting to bother me a little bit, where we look stupid. We get megged. We get danced around super easily. I want to see this team be a little more composed on when we do have that chance when they have a loose touch or a loose pass. Instead of just going balls to the wall and just jumping straight into it, let's see if we can be smarter sometimes and not just jump in. But when we do get beat to it, know when to pull the guy down, know when to end it. You've got to have that wherewithal to know that since he's going to just ram it right up the field, and we've got to just stop this right now. So since he's number 2 in dribbles per 90, so they're going to try to keep that ball on their feet and move up the field with it. So you got to know when to take him down as well, which is not a sexy thing to say, but you know what? It's realistic. Possession. They're a good possession team. Like I said, top 10. We got to disrupt them. Guys, we are top 5 in all the pressing and counter pressing stats that I can find. We've got to find a way to disrupt this team's rhythm that they have found and be able to make them uncomfortable and hopefully generate some errors or some errant passes or some loose touches and give ourselves a chance in this game. For us, it's going to be a quality of chances type of game where Cincy concedes the least amount of expected goals against per shot. We usually take the lowest XG per shot right now in the MLS. I haven't looked at it for this week, but I'm pretty sure it's probably the same as it was last week. You got to find the middle ground in there, and we've got to be able to seize that 1, maybe 2 big opportunities that we're going to get this game. If it's the Klaus PK, got to find the back of the net. If it's a Ostrak screamer from 30 yards out, got to be upper corner. We've got to seize those opportunities against a team that is going to give us so very little. So that is my final key to the game. I think my goal for this game is let's respond. At the very least, I want to see us create more chances, real chances than we did last game. And I want to see some rotation, some new faces in the lineup. And I think we are going to see that as well. So getting into the Hoffman brothers starting 11, obviously we love Hoffman brothers here. I had them out for my tune-up. I got a couple invoices, a couple of quotes to help me revamp some of my cooling system in here. And I already had Carter back out on Monday to do those. We made some updates. I got it done, and I got some discounted fees at that for being a home protection plan member. It was quick and easy. Carter got a text that he was coming. I said, sure, I'm ready for you. Knocks on the door. I know exactly what it looks like. It's not a sketchy thing at all. He puts the booties on, respect for the house. I love it. Gets up, does his work, and gets out. It was fantastic. Grade A service, white glove type stuff. I'm telling you, Hoffman Brothers should be your home services partner. Whenever you need home services, anything under the roof, these guys do it. So call Hoffman Brothers at 314-664-3011 or visit them online at hoffmanbros.com to schedule now. So let's get into our Hoffman Brothers starting 11. This is a fun one. I'm bummed I'm doing this without Justin because I think we have some debate here. But as I look at this, I think there's going to be some rotation here. And I think there could be less than some might think because I think of some of the timing and some substitutions that came on Wednesday. But if I am Carnell and we're going against who I revere to be top one, top two team in the league right now with Cincinnati, obviously Berkey maintains his spot in net. I'm not going to the Lunt train on this one. Dewar will come in at left back because Marcanic is going to be suspended for this match given the red card. I'm going to go to Parker and Nilsson in the center back spot. Nilsson only played 45 last game. That was a part of his recovery plan. Nothing to worry about injury wise. I'm going to put him back in. Say go for it. So I'm going to play those two, and I'm going to go to my debate is on the right. Totland's already logged a ton of minutes. Do you go to Watts? Do you go to Nerwinski? That is the toughest one for me to think about right now. I'm going to go on a whim and just say Akil Watts comes in for this game, which would be a surprise, but I think one I'm welcome to see, as he can definitely get up the field. My two in the midfield, I'm going to go Blum getting to start this game. I think he looked good in his cameo on Wednesday, and I hate to say it, but I'm going to have to, I feel like you have to go with one of Ostrak or Dirk in there, even though those guys are, again, logging a ton of minutes. I'm going to go Ostrak next to Blum and have Ostrak a little more freedom to move forward. And then as I get into the midfield three that sit beneath the striker, I am going to go on the left, Celio. He did not do much, if at all, in this past game against LAFC. I think he should have more success. If not, you got to find him more success on Saturday. In the middle, I'm going to go AZ. I'm going to give him the reins, guys. I'm going to give him a chance, give him a start. We're going to need a spark. We're going to need a big spark, a big creative spark, and I think he can do that on his day. So I'm giving him a chance there. I'm going to go rotate here on the right, and I'm going to go to actually, instead of Alm, I'm going to go to Thor. Give Thor a little extended cameo and give him a start, see how he can perform given a good amount of minutes under his belt. And then up top, I'm going back to Klaus. Sam has been a shadow of his former self since returning from the drama that unfolded with him being held out of the team for personal reasons a couple of weeks ago. I want to see Klaus. Klaus is, he's not fresh, but he also didn't log a full 90. He came off, basically, I want to say he was subbed off at the 63rd minute. I think that's okay. He should be ready to go again for this team. So I'm going him up top. So that's my 11. Justin and I both predicted 1-1 draws for this one, which is quite interesting. Could be a very nervy affair, but the books have a very different thing to say on this one. They've got City at plus 350 underdogs, which is probably the biggest underdog we've been all season. Cincinnati at minus 150, the draw at plus 290, and the over-under set at 2.5. Over at minus 160, under at plus 130. I am going to go. Ooh, this is tough, guys. I think it's always so hard to make these, especially given the influx of games that we have this week. But I'm going to be tempted to go for the double chance, I think, and give us a chance and put my faith in the guys to really come out and get a result here. And a result for me, I consider that to be a win or a draw. So I'm going to go the double chance on this one, and that is my bet for the game. Justin's got his own. He's got quite a couple here, so he will put that out as we get closer to the game with our bets and our picks, our Grahammers. So hopefully you all have enjoyed this show. It's been an hour, probably the longest show we've made, I guess I've made on this show for this specific episode all year, if not quite some time. So thank you all for bearing with me. We've had still quite a few in the room for it being so late on a Thursday, but I appreciate you all for tuning in, and hopefully you learned a little bit of something today. We had some good time with George, and some good time thinking about our teammate. I keep wanting to say, but he's not our teammate, but it feels like it is. But Edu Leuven, obviously, him, his wife, his family, and our thoughts and prayers as they head through this pretty tumultuous time in their lives right now. So appreciate you all again for listening. Been a great show, and we'll catch you all again on Sunday for a recap of Cincinnati, all for City.